Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cooking with Dr. Soski. Thanks for sticking with me after I took a break last week to make a big announcement. Big announcement was that I am officially opening my California satellite practice, so I might talk about that a little bit as we cook. But let's get started so we can keep this under an hour and I'll chat as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by setting the oven to 375 degrees so that we can cook our potatoes. All right. So today we're going to be cooking breakfast for dinner. Breakfast is one of my favorite meals of the day, and I love breakfast foods. It's one of my favorite meals to cook for myself and for others. So since I am only filming this in the evenings, given time restraints of my job, I thought we would just have it breakfast for dinner. So tofu scrambles are one of my favorite foods. Scrambles are one of my favorite foods, but I don't really eat eggs anymore, so I got really good at making tofu scrambles. And what goes better with scramble than breakfast potatoes? So let's start there. So as we start, I also want to announce that today I will be raising money for the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. It's a really awesome organization. It's run by Black trans people, which is really important because they understand and then can address the issues that affect their community. Black trans folks are really at the core of the LGBT movement for equal rights. Black trans folks were really some of the pioneers of that movement and were really at the center of a lot of the massive, the really big like Stonewall riots and whatnot. And and they also are one of the biggest groups in the LGBTQ community that face a lot of discrimination, health disparities, adverse life events, and so this group is really important. We should really support these folks. So if you have it in your heart to donate today, please do. I know I've already collected a number of donations, so thank you guys to those folks who have already donated. It really means a lot to me. It really means a lot to that group. So thank you. So as we're starting to cut potato. I'm using a red potato. You can use Yukon Gold. Russet works okay too, but I don't really like the texture, so I like the texture of red and Yukon Gold better. And we're going to be cutting them into chunks that are somewhere between a ½ inch to an inch cube in length. So I like to keep the skins on the potato. Potato skins are actually the most nutritious part of it. So when you take the skins off, you lose a lot of the nutritional value of the potato. So I'm going to leave it on. But if you don't like the skins, you can definitely still take it off. It's just from a nutritional standpoint, that's where a lot of the minerals and vitamins are. Definitely still some in the rest of the potato, but that's where a lot of it is. I thought another interesting thing for me to chat to you about today as I chop is gut inflammation. And the reason I'm doing this is because, or the reason this came to my mind was I actually don't eat potatoes anymore. I took a food intolerance test that showed that potatoes really aren't good for me and that they were causing a lot of inflammation in my body, so I don't eat them anymore. So I will be giving these to a friend at the end of the show. But I used to love potatoes. I mean, I still theoretically love potatoes. They just don't love me. And they are delicious and they go great with breakfast foods. So I still wanted to cook them and show you guys how I make my breakfast potatoes. I just won't be eating them. But gut inflammation is something that isn't really talked about in mainstream culture or medicine, but is a huge part of naturopathic medicine, as the gut is really the backbone of health. In your gut, there's something called the microbiome, which is a lot of bacteria in your gut that help you process nutrients. They create hormones. They create neurotransmitters. And so your gut is really involved in your mood in that way. And when you have an unhealthy gut, it can negatively impact your mood. It can prevent you from absorbing nutrients that you're intaking and can cause systemic inflammation in your body. If you've ever heard of something called leaky gut, that's due to inflammation in your intestinal system that's allowing essentially the cells in your gut they are usually tightly held together. I'm going to use my hands. They're usually tightly held together, but when you have inflammation, they kind of pull apart and they get leaky, and they allow bigger molecules and things that normally wouldn't be able to get from your gut into your bloodstream. They allow it in your bloodstream, and then your immune system freaks out, and that's not good. You want your immune system to be on calm mode, not freak out mode. So finding the right foods that are that don't cause inflammation in your body, and identifying the ones that do and eliminating them from your diet is monumental and super foundational to achieving health. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will answer them. Or if you have any questions about your individual health, feel free to reach out, and I can help you identify the foods that you're personally intolerant to, so that you can achieve optimum health. All right, so we have our chopped potatoes. So I'm gonna just take some olive oil and douse them in olive oil. Actually, gonna use up all of this olive oil. And then use a bunch of spices. So I like to use smoked paprika. I don't always measure this, but for the sake of the video, I will. So I use about a teaspoon of each, and that makes it super, super herby and super, super flavorful. So smoked paprika, we have some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some rosemary. And then lastly, just some salt and pepper to taste. So you can definitely measure this if you want. I say about a half a teaspoon of salt, but if you want to use more or less, that's okay, depending on how salty you want your potatoes. And then some pepper. And that's it. And then you mix it all together. Somebody grab a spoon. You can use your hands too. I usually, I'll probably use, just to show you how to use a spoon, not that you couldn't figure that one part out, but I actually really like to use my hands because I feel like I can really spread the spices out a lot more on the potatoes. Another way to do this is to mix the olive oil and the spices together in a separate bowl and then add that to the potatoes. And that does help sometimes get the spices a little bit more evenly mixed into the oil before you add them to the potatoes. But I like doing it this way because it's just one less dish to wash. And still comes out pretty effective to me. And then once you have everything pretty evenly coated, you're going to grab a cookie sheet. And then evenly spread them on the cookie sheet, the baking sheet. And I'm just going to wash my hands, and we're going to throw this in the oven. All right. So the timer to at least 30 minutes. They might need more. Also, if you want crispier potatoes, you can do it for longer. But we'll set the timer for 30 minutes and see where we're at then. And we can always leave it in for longer. So next, I'm going to prep the tofu for our tofu scramble. So this is just a brick of tofu that I took out of the package earlier. And there's some liquid in here that I'm actually going to dump out. And the reason I left the liquid in is because I want to show you, so oftentimes, if you're new to using tofu, since it's usually sitting in water, sometimes you may want that water in, but sometimes you don't. So to get the water out, there are definitely some like fancy contraptions that you can buy that are called tofu presses. You can get it out. But what I do is just take a dish rag, set the tofu in the middle, kind of cover it up and make sure that it's covered on all sides, and then just kind of push it a little bit. Not too much. You're not really, I mean, in this case, it doesn't really matter if I squish it because we're going to crumble it anyway. But in other cases, you may not want to crumble it or squish it too much. But this helps get some of the liquid out. And then today I am using an herbed tofu. So as you see, it has like little green specks. So it already has some herbs in it, but you don't have to use that. You can use just regular tofu. So now we're going to crumble this, and this is going to be our tofu scramble part. And it doesn't really matter how you crumble it. It's really personal preference as to what size pieces you want. All right. And then we're just going to set that to the side for now. Go rinse my hands. And then we're going to chop some veggies for our scramble. So today I'm working with some garlic, onion, pepper. I have some mushrooms. I have some mushrooms in here, and I picked some kale from my garden. So I'm going to use some veggies from my garden today, which is super awesome. So we're going to start with some garlic. One thing I also wanted to bring up that is new is that I have officially uploaded all of my old cooking videos onto a YouTube channel for easier access. You don't have to go through and stream through or go through and search them through my Facebook wall. And also, if you, it's there as a resource for people. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in some new recipes or wants to learn some tips and tricks as to cook with vegetables or eating healthy, definitely welcome to share that with anybody. It's free and open to the public. And the link is in the description of this video if you'd like to have access to that. From now on, I'll be posting all of my videos up there. And I'll probably even have some extra videos that I won't do live on Facebook, but that I'll post on there, some guides as to which vegetables it's important to eat organic, some different cooking tips, and if you guys have any questions, you're definitely also welcome to give me some ideas on some shorter videos to make that aren't necessarily long, full recipe videos, but just some interesting things that questions you want answered. All right, so we've got some garlic. So I like personally in my scrambles when things are cut into small pieces, and so everything is evenly mixed versus having bigger chunks of things. but that is definitely a personal preference, and you are welcome to cut your vegetables however you want. Smaller pieces usually take longer, so if you're in a time crunch, you can definitely pick bigger pieces. But I like kind of smaller pieces for my scrambles. So one thing I like to talk about, and I know I've talked about it in other videos, is eating the rainbow. So different colored vegetables, so the different colors of different vegetables represent different phytonutrients in the different vegetables. And having versatility in the phytonutrients you consume is good, so that you get diversity and kind of maximize the healing potential of your food. So we have red in the peppers, and we have green in kale. We have some yellows in the onion, and some whites in the mushrooms, some whites and browns. The kale also has a little bit of purple in it in the stems, so we'll get some purple in there too. Alright, we got our pepper all chopped up. Now we're going to chop some onion. So I'll say again, for those of you who just joined us or who missed the intro, I took a break last week from doing my videos, or my cooking videos, to announce that I am starting a satellite practice in California. I'm still going to be working in Oregon and completing my residency here, but it's just a way to help out folks in California who I know, since I have a wide network there. If you're interested at all, the website is www.valleynaturalmedicine.com. So Valley being the San Fernando Valley, represent. And naturopathic medicine is more, for those of you who don't know, is a way of looking at the body more than anything. And it really focuses on seeing the individual as a whole versus the sum of its parts. So now often in medicine, if you have something wrong with your heart, you go to a cardiologist. If you have something on your skin, you go to the dermatologist. If you have allergies, you go to an allergist specialist. Something wrong with your foot, you go to the podiatrist. Now, that's one way of looking at it, but the thing is, with many health issues that people have, is that they're all connected. Oftentimes, they're all connected. And when you silo off health that way, you often only get to treat one aspect without seeing the bigger picture of the person. And so what I was trained to do in the field of medicine that I studied is looking at the whole person and seeing, how are all these pieces connected? What's the underlying root cause of all of this, versus just kind of playing whack-a-mole with different symptoms that come up. And this medicine can be really powerful for people who feel like they haven't really, their health concerns haven't truly been addressed by by Western medical system, or if they're looking for more of a natural perspective on it. And then also we really focus on boosting the health of our patients, more so than tracking down and managing symptoms of disease. So I really love working with folks on diet is a really big centerpiece of that and of health. Taking, supplements can also help. Supplements can help because a lot of times we're not getting adequate nutrition from our food. Working on sleep is huge. Proper sleep is really foundational to our health and really isn't addressed. And there's so many people out there who suffer from insomnia or don't get restful sleep throughout the night. I know because I am one of those people. I'm working on these issues myself. And so addressing sleep. Stress management is really, really huge. We live in a pretty crazy society, especially 2020 has been pretty nuts. And stress really affects your body on so many levels. And I could nerd out on that for hours. So I won't do that unless somebody specifically asks me a question about it. But stress really impacts our health on many, many levels. And so working with stress management is huge to achieving optimal health and sustainable optimal health versus temporary health. So that's what I do as a naturopathic doctor. In Oregon, I'm licensed to prescribe pharmaceuticals, so I also learned that. In California, I'm not. That's not within my scope of practice, so I can't do that there, but I am trained in it. And so that just becomes another tool in my tool belt, but also using herbal medicine, again, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle management. All of these things are my tools that I use to help people achieve optimum health. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I can also, if you feel like I'm not the best person for you, I can set you up with a great doctor who can help you. All right, so now we're chopping some mushrooms. I was actually talking with some family this weekend about mushrooms. These are just button mushrooms because they're one of the easiest and most recognizable mushrooms. But there's a lot of really awesome edible mushrooms out there that are kind of a little bit different. So you have shiitake mushrooms are another popular one used a lot in Asian cooking. But there's also maitake and lion's mane and oyster mushrooms and enoki mushrooms, and there's a million mushrooms out there that are edible. And so I highly recommend, if you are new to mushrooms and want to explore, just try a mushroom out, throw it in a dish, see how it works. You can pretty much cook them all the same, chop them up and throw them in a stir fry or in soup or ramen. They're even really good roasted in the oven. So I would say explore the mushroom world, because there's a lot of really awesome mushrooms out there, and they're all really good for your immune system. They are super potent fighters. I use them a lot with cancer patients, recommending mushroom supplements to get an even more condensed dose of mushrooms. But they really work on increasing the amount of immune cells and the immune cell function in your body. So they're really good for you. Have mushrooms all the time. All right, I think that's enough mushrooms. Okay. All right, and lastly, we got some kale. So I'm really proud of this kale. I grew this kale. It's really nice that a lot of the things in my garden are coming into to be ready to be eaten. All right, and now our veggies are all chopped, so we're ready to cook. So I'm gonna move over to the stove and take you with me, and we're gonna start with our tofu, and then move to our veggie scramble. And again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask them in the chat. All right, so let's start with So actually, I'm gonna grab some coconut oil that I forgot to grab. Coconut oil can get kind of expensive, but Costco has these really awesome big tubs of it for super cheap, so highly recommend that. Grab some coconut oil. It's already pretty warm in my house, so this is already pretty slushy. And you can use a generous amount of oil. The tofu will really eat it up, so you can use a lot of oil. So we're going to use that. oil, and then I'm going to get my spices ready. So we're going to use garlic, onion powder, turmeric, parsley, and some nutritional yeast. And a little bit of paprika, because what's a meal without a little bit of paprika? And again, you're just going to kind of use a teaspoon of each herb, kind of like we did for the potatoes. So once your oil is dissolved, you can add the tofu. And then you're just going to add a teaspoon of each spice. So that was onion powder. Now we have garlic powder. And some turmeric. The turmeric kind of makes it yellow, which is awesome because it kind of almost looks like eggs that way. So someone asked, can you use another kind of oil? And you definitely can. You can use olive oil, sesame oil. I personally like the flavor that the coconut oil gives it, but you can definitely use olive oil or avocado oil. So yeah, any kind of oil works. So I'm just going to put a couple shakes of paprika. I just like the flavor, but you don't want that to overpower it. And same with the parsley. I just kind of like the flavor that the parsley gives it. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the parsley. A couple shakes. A little bit of pepper. A little bit of salt. And tofu definitely needs salt to taste good, so don't hold back on the salt with your tofu. And then some nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast kind of gives it a like umami flavor to kind of mimic eggs, so that's kind of what gives it that. And then so once you all have that, you just mix it in. And the nutritional yeast is also a great source of B vitamins for vegans. So vegans use it a lot in vegan. It's used a lot in vegan cooking, and it's a great source of B vitamins that you oftentimes don't get, especially B12, that you don't get in other in plant-based foods. It has a great cheesy flavor. So for any products, vegan products that you're trying to make cheesy like, nutritional yeast is awesome for that. So you just mix that in, and you don't have to cook it that long. You can eat tofu raw. It's already kind of processed, but you do want it heated through, so you're just going to heat it. Mix it until it's evenly coated. And also, I want to note that today, instead of using the stainless steel pans, I decided to use some cast iron pans. There's a theory that when you use cast iron pans, actually some of the iron, especially depending on the pans used, these are a little bit more finished, so this doesn't happen as much, but in the less finished cast iron pans, some of the iron actually gets into your food, which is good, because especially, again, if you're eating a plant-based diet, having more, there are great sources of plant-based iron, but it isn't as much as meat, and so having a little bit of extra iron in your food is good, so you can prevent iron deficiency anemia, which is when your blood cells don't have enough iron and they can't carry oxygen as efficiently. So using cast iron is a great way of kind of subtly boosting the iron content of your food. All right, so that's pretty much mixed in, and as you see, it kind of, well, I don't know if you can see, you can kind of see, it looks kind of like eggs. All right, so we're going to turn the heat way down on that and just let that kind of sit, and I'll stir it occasionally, and then we're just going to saute up some veggies. So I have some more olive oil over here in a jar that I'm going to use. And this is actually some truffle oil that we made, my partner and I made. And oil really absorbs the flavor of truffles. So truffles are little mushrooms. They're quite expensive, but they do grow wildly in the Pacific Northwest, so we can find really affordable truffles at our local farmers market with our mushroom dude. So all you do to make truffle oil is you take a big vessel, like a big gallon glass jar, and you want to use glass because plastic will absorb the smell of the truffle. They're very potent. And all you do is you put a jar like this of olive oil in the center of the jar, and you can put a couple truffles around it, and the oil just infuses with the flavor of the truffles without the truffle even touching the oil. And so you can even make a couple rounds. The flavor really absorbs into anything that's oil-based or fat-based. So even an avocado, you can put truffle in the same jar as an avocado, and the avocado will take on the flavor of the truffle. So it's kind of a cool way to make truffle-flavored things without even having to break up the truffle. And then once you've kind of done that a couple of times, and it looks like the truffle's getting about ready to be at the end of its life, then you can shave it up and use the truffle in something else. So, if anybody ever wants some truffles, come visit me in Portland, and we'll go grab some truffles and make a delicious meal. Alright, so we're going to start our veggies by heating up some onions. And I know I've talked in the past in other videos about kind of the timing of cooking vegetables. So in the past, lately I've been throwing everything all in at once just to save time and to make it less complicated. But for my scrambles, I like getting the onions cooked a little bit more beforehand, and so that they get kind of translucent before I throw the other veggies in. But you can definitely also, if you want to cook things quicker, or just for simplicity, you can always throw everything in at once too. I also like using a lot of onion in my scramble. I think it's a delicious flavor, and onions are great. They're super immune boosting and anti-inflammatory. So I like using a lot of onion and a lot of garlic also when I cook. So we're going to cut the onion down a little bit so it starts getting translucent. as they start getting translucent, I'm going to throw the next veggie in, which is going to be our red pepper. And now for the rest of the time, we're just cooking veggies. So, see. Got a shout out for the onions and garlic. Yes. Onions and garlic and everything. Alright, so this is pretty much done. Our tofu is done. It's just staying warm. So I'm actually going to turn that off because the pan is going to keep it quite warm. And we're also going to throw it in with our veggies at the end. So. So at this point, I want to give another shout out to anybody who's watching who feels so inclined. Today, this video is being dedicated to the Black Trans Advocacy Coalition. Black trans folks face a lot of discrimination in healthcare, in the workforce. Therefore, they face a lot of socioeconomic disparities, health disparities, and this coalition really helps this group of people overcome some of those disparities in many, many different ways. They also, because of these disparities, oftentimes this population turns to alternative avenues of supporting themselves, be it prostitution or drug dealing. Not saying that is the experience of all Black trans folks by any means, but it is the reality for some, and therefore they get exposed to even more health risks, they get arrested for criminal activity, get put into the criminal justice system, and it's really hard for them to get out of that system because then they come out, and even if they do try to get a quote unquote real job, they get faced with discrimination. So this is getting better in today's time, especially in more liberal cities, but it is still not great in a lot of places around the country. Our current administration has actually taken back a lot of the rights that trans folks have faced. Trans folks have achieved over the last several years. So this is really important to help these folks out. If you don't understand what it's like to be a trans person, or even that concept of wanting to express a different gender identity or be a different gender than what you were born with, I highly recommend that you educate yourself. And I'm just gonna, this is near and dear to my heart, not because I experienced this personally, but imagine waking up in a body that didn't feel like yours. That would feel really, really shitty. And imagine if you tried to be your authentic self and express that, and you were continually shit on by society and by people, and you were hurt and you were murdered, and which happens all the time, just for wanting to live your authentic life and express yourself in the way you wanted to express. We as cisgendered people, and cis means that you identify with the gender that you were born with. We have no idea what that experience is like, and both the mental, emotional trauma and the physical trauma that comes with that. So I really do believe that these folks deserve so much better than what they've gotten out of society. And this is the little part that we can do, is supporting organizations that support these communities. So if you have it in your heart, please donate to that organization. They're awesome. So I'm going to add mushrooms and garlic now, pivoting back to the recipe. an interesting thing about mushrooms, I was talking to a mycologist, who is someone who studies mushrooms, and I asked her because there's a thing that when you food is its most vital and most nutritious in its raw form for most foods. So like most vegetables, when you cook them, it actually diminishes their nutritional value. It does increase the amount that you can absorb too, because it kind of breaks it down so your body doesn't have to do as much work. But it also does have less nutritional value than raw vegetables. And I asked her, is that the same with mushrooms? So like if you cook mushrooms, do you lose a lot of nutritional value? And she said actually quite the opposite. She said a lot of the nutrition in mushrooms we really can't access until they're cooked. And so by cooking your mushrooms, she said you should always eat cooked mushrooms. Now I think, sometimes having some raw mushrooms like in a salad or something like that is totally fine. It's not going to hurt you. But she definitely believed that you should definitely always cook your mushrooms and cook them like pretty well. So that was coming from a mycologist that I talked to, so someone who studies mushrooms. All right, so our half-hour timer went off for our potatoes. So I'm just going to take a look and see how they're doing and see if we need a little bit more time. See if they're done. Oh yeah, those look done to me. So we're going to pull those out. So as you see, we've got some awesome roasted potatoes. They're going to taste so good for somebody who eats them. Just go some back there. We're going to finish cooking our veggies. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to throw them in the chat box. Be happy to answer any questions you have. And again, all of this will be posted to YouTube for ease of access, so you can access my YouTube channel. The link is in the description of the video. And all of my videos are up there now. And the last vegetable we get to add in is kale. Now, the green leafy vegetables cook pretty quickly, so that's why I usually throw them in at the end. It's because they don't take that long to cook. And so if you throw them in too early, the rest of your vegetables won't be cooked, and then you just overcook all your greens. And they really cook down, you'll notice. You could take like a huge pile of greens, and they cook down to almost nothing. So the more you cook them, the more they kind of turn into more nothing. So throwing them in at the end is ideal. And also at this point, so now we have all our veggies mixed together, and our kale's getting all cooked up. I'm going to throw the tofu in. So you can kind of do this two ways. So you can keep the tofu separate, and then do like veggies as a side and tofu and potatoes. But I like mixing the tofu together, like as if you were going to make an egg scramble with some vegetables. for me, I'm not going to eat this with the potatoes, but what I am going to do is you can also turn this into tacos. So you can take the tofu scramble, heat up some tortillas, and eat it with tacos. Or eat it as tacos. Also, tofu scramble is really good with some salsa on top, some avocado or some guacamole, or hot sauce if you like spicy food. Alright, so we got all of that mixed in. Get this stuff out of the way. Alright, and that is all done. So now we're just going to plate it up. And so to serve, just grab some tofu scramble. And grab some potatoes. And then I'm going to put some salsa on top of mine. Some tomatillo salsa. And enjoy! So, thank you all so much for tuning in with me again this week. I hope you enjoyed today's recipe. I'll be doing this again next week at 6 o'clock, so tune in. If you have any questions or recommendations or inquiries or suggestions on what to cook, feel free to drop me a line. If you're interested at all in seeing me in my Oregon or California practice, also feel free to shoot me a message. And if not, I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.